All right, look straight at the screen and be honest with me for a second. Have you ever lost an argument just because you suddenly started crying? If you're nodding right now, then welcome to the Angry Criers Club. It's actually a pretty big club, but the feeling? Honestly, it's the worst. You have clear arguments, solid logic, and you're fully ready to push back. But the moment you open your mouth, your throat suddenly tightens, your eyes start to burn, and then the tears just start pouring out. Inside, you're boiling with anger. But on the outside, you look like a small hurt victim who needs a hug. The other person suddenly softens their tone. Hey, why are you crying? It's not even that serious. And that's it. The argument basically stops right there. Everything you were about to say disappears, and you walk away feeling both frustrated and powerless. Inside your head, you're screaming, I'm not hurt, I'm furious. So why does our body react in such a strange way? Why do we cry when we're actually angry? If you've ever wondered about that, then this video is basically your lifesaver. In the next few minutes, I'll explain why this happens and share a few simple ways to help you control this reaction better. Let's get started. I'm not denying that sadness can make you cry, but it's not the only reason. In fact, you can cry in many different situations even when you're not sad at all. There's a very familiar scene that many people have experienced, but few really understand why it happens. You're talking with your parents. At first, the topic is just something small, but then they say something that makes you feel dismissed. You try to explain. You try to make your point clearly. But the more you talk, the more they interrupt you. The more you talk, the more you get labeled as arguing, being disrespectful, or too sensitive. At that moment, you're not sad. You're angry. You feel frustrated. You're upset because you're being misunderstood. Your mind is racing, trying to find the right words to push back. All you want is to explain things clearly so the other person understands that you're not wrong the way they think you are. But right when you're about to say that one decisive sentence, your throat tightens, your voice starts to shake, and the tears show up. What confuses you is this. But I'm angry. Why am I crying? Am I being weak? But look closely at the chain of events that just happened. What made you break down wasn't sadness in the usual sense. What pushed you to tears was the feeling of being pressured, misunderstood, and cut off, while you were trying your best to stay calm and rational. The harder you try to hold yourself together, the more your nervous system has to strain. The more you try to speak clearly, the more your body is pulled into a higher level of tension. At some point, it crosses the threshold. And once it crosses that threshold, your body needs an exit to release the pressure. Tears appear as a natural response in the moment when the nervous system has been activated too strongly. It's more like a signal that your internal system has been pushed too high, not a sign that says you're sad. So if you've ever cried when you were angry, set aside the idea that it means weakness. What your tears are saying here is not, I'm sad. They're saying, the level of activation inside has become too high. So what exactly happened? In that tense moment, what mechanism did your nervous system switch on, and why did your body choose tears as a way to bring you back down? Try looking at this reaction in your body through a very familiar image. When you run fast for a few minutes or exercise hard in the heat, your body starts to warm up. Your heart rate rises, your breathing gets heavier, and after a short while, sweat appears on your forehead. No one sees someone sweating and thinks their body is weak. On the contrary, it's a sign that the system inside is working at full power, and sweat is simply the body's way of cooling itself down so it doesn't get overloaded. Interestingly, your nervous system has a similar mechanism. A tense argument can also create a kind of heat increase in the nervous system. When you feel pressured or have to defend your point of view, the brain quickly activates a familiar survival response. Your heart rate speeds up, your breathing becomes faster, your muscles tighten, and adrenaline is released. Your entire body is pushed into a very high level of activation, like an engine suddenly forced to run at high power. When the activation level of the nervous system rises too high, an automatic regulation mechanism begins to work to bring the body back to a stable state before it becomes overloaded. During this cooling down process, a familiar reaction may appear: tears. If sweat is the body's way of cooling down when you push it too hard physically, then tears in these moments can be seen as a kind of emotional sweat, a physiological response that helps release pressure when the nervous system has been pushed too high. So when you cry while you're angry, it doesn't mean you're weak or out of control. Most of the time, it simply shows that your emotions have been pushed to a very intense level, and your body is doing what it always does when pressure passes the limit, finding a way to cool things down and protect itself. But I know this. No matter how fascinating the biology is, standing there sniffling in front of someone you're arguing with is still a terrible experience. Nobody wants that. So how do you stop it? How do you keep a cool head when your chest feels like it's on fire? The good news is you don't need to memorize some complicated process. In reality, you just need to understand a few common moments when the urge to cry starts forming, and know how to handle them at the right time. Situation 1. When emotions start rising. This is the earliest stage and also the easiest one to control. You may not be crying yet, but your body is already sending very clear signals. Your chest starts to feel hot, your breathing gets faster, and there's a slight sting at the bridge of your nose, like a warning that tears could show up very quickly if the argument keeps escalating. Many people ignore this stage because they think they're still in control, but in reality, this is the golden moment to step in. One simple but extremely effective trick is to change where you're looking. When emotions rise, many people unconsciously look down at the floor or stare directly into the other person's eyes. Both of these actions can pull you deeper into the emotion. Instead, gently lift your chin and direct your gaze upward. You can look at a corner of the ceiling, look at a light bulb, or simply glance slightly above the other person's head. This action may seem very small, but it has an important neurological effect. When your eyes look upward and begin scanning the space around you, your brain is forced to shift attention from the emotional stream inside to processing visual information in the outside environment. In simple terms, you're pulling your brain out of the emotional storm. Next, adjust your breathing. When we're angry, our breathing often becomes fast and shallow, which pushes the nervous system into even higher activation. Instead of trying to take a deep breath and then exhale quickly like people say when they tell you to calm down, do the opposite. Breathe in for about 3 seconds, then breathe out slowly for about 6 seconds. The key point is that the exhale should be longer than the inhale. This breathing pattern directly stimulates the vagus nerve, a crucial part of the nervous system that helps the body shift from a stressed state to a relaxed one. After just a few breaths like this, your heart rate will start to slow down, and the intensity of the emotion will begin to drop. If the emotion is still rising, you can use a small but very effective trick. Force your brain to do something logical. For example, try doing a quick calculation in your head. 100 minus 7. That's 93. 93 minus 7, 86. It may sound a little strange, but there's a clear neuroscience reason behind it. The part of the brain that processes emotions and the part that processes logic share the same energy resources. When you force your brain to focus on a difficult logical task, it pulls resources away from the emotional center. As a result, the storm inside you starts to calm down. Situation 2. When you start talking too fast or your voice begins to shake. If the argument keeps escalating, you may move into the second situation, when you start speaking too quickly or your voice begins to tremble. This is a sign that your body has entered a very high level of activation. You begin speaking faster than usual. Your voice gets higher. Your sentences run together like a machine gun, and sometimes you don't even have time to think about what you just said. The problem is that your brain hears your own voice. When it hears a rushed, tense, high-pitched voice, it interprets that as a signal of danger. As a result, it releases even more adrenaline. That's why many arguments escalate so quickly, not just because of what the other person says, but because our own voice is accidentally increasing our body's stress level. To break this loop, you need to do something very simple. Slow your body down. Intentionally reduce your speaking speed by about 20%. You don't need to speak like a robot, just slightly slower than normal. Then lower the tone of your voice. And most importantly, add short pauses between sentences. Instead of talking in one long stream without stopping, speak more like this. I understand what you're saying, but the issue here is these small pauses have a powerful effect. They send a strong signal back to the brain that the situation is still under control. When the brain receives that safety signal, adrenaline levels begin to drop. Situation 3. When your throat tightens and tears are about to spill out, this is the most dangerous moment. Your throat starts to tighten. It feels like there's a lump in your throat, and your voice could crack at any second. You know that if you say just one more sentence, the tears might come out immediately. In this situation, the smartest move is to create a short pause for your nervous system. You can simply say, "Give me a moment. I'm going to grab a glass of water, and then we can continue." Many people are afraid to do this because they think it looks like they're running away. But in reality, this is an extremely effective strategy to break the emotional escalation loop. When you stand up, walk to get some water, and take a few slow sips, something very interesting happens. The act of swallowing forces the muscles in your throat to relax. It breaks that lump in the throat feeling that many people experience right before crying. During that moment, you can also gently shake your hands a few times. This helps your body release some of the adrenaline that is built up in your muscles. You only need about 60 seconds like this. 1 minute is enough for your nervous system to pass the peak of activation and start calming down. Situation 4. The tears have already fallen. Finally, let's talk about the hardest situation, the moment when the tears have already started falling. The other person is looking at you, and in your mind, a feeling of embarrassment begins to appear. If this happens, remember one very important principle. Don't apologize. Don't say, "Sorry, this just happens to me." Don't say, "Sorry, I'm losing control." When you apologize, you're unintentionally sending the signal that you did something wrong. You're quietly admitting that you made a mistake or that something is wrong with you, but you didn't do anything wrong. Instead of apologizing, name it and redirect. Look directly into their eyes and say clearly, "I want you to know these are tears of frustration, not sadness. I'm not hurt." Or if you can, say it even more firmly. "I care deeply about this issue, so my body is having a physiological reaction. Please ignore it. I'm still listening, and I want to finish this conversation." A statement like that has real power. It shows that even though your body is having an automatic physiological reaction, you are still in control of yourself. And when you show that level of self-control, the other person will usually stop looking at you with pity. Instead, they begin to see something else: respect. These tips aren't trying to force you to stop having emotions. Instead, they work directly with your nervous system. When your breathing slows down, your heart rate begins to drop as well. When your attention shifts to observing your surroundings or thinking logically, your brain is forced to reduce the intensity of the emotional surge that's building inside you. And when your body is given a short pause, the chain reaction of stress is interrupted before it escalates too far. In other words, these techniques help your internal system move from reaction mode into regulation mode. But this process takes time to become natural. There will still be moments when you find yourself in an argument and the tears appear before you have time to do anything. That can absolutely happen. Not because you failed, but simply because your nervous system reacted faster than your thoughts. So if that happens, try to be a little kinder to yourself. The part inside you that reacts so strongly is not a troublemaker. It's more like an over-dedicated bodyguard, always trying to protect you from stress and pressure. Sometimes it reacts a little too strongly, but its intention is still to keep you safe. What's important is not to do something that many people do afterward. Blame yourself for crying. The anger you felt at the start was already heavy enough. You don't need to shoot another arrow at yourself in the form of shame or self-judgment. So the next time you feel tears building up during an argument, try pausing for a moment. Take a slow breath, lift your gaze slightly, and remember one very important thing. Even those tears are proof that you feel life deeply. They show that you care about what you're saying, that you're emotionally invested in what's happening, and that you're not living in a cold or indifferent way. That's not something you need to apologize for. In many cases, that strong ability to feel is exactly what makes you a genuine person, someone who cares and can truly connect with others. So if your nervous system sometimes reacts a little strongly, it doesn't mean you're weak. It simply means you're alive and feeling things for real. Have you ever cried during an argument or while trying to defend your point of view? If you've experienced that, leave a comment below. You can simply write, "I have," or briefly share your experience. Many people watching this video have gone through the same thing, and sometimes just knowing you're not the only one can bring a surprising sense of relief. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Together, we'll keep exploring the fascinating workings of the human mind, not to judge ourselves, but to understand ourselves better. I'm Apex. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any videos. Goodbye, and see you next time.